And Black Gemara, we are up to today the Gemara of Ein Gimel Amud Aleph, and we're still continuing on the subject about a husband and a father being Mayfair, annulling the Nedarim of his fiance if she's an Ira. And yesterday we had a question that was really unresolved. The question was, does the husband or the father really have to hear the neder before they cancel it, or they can just say the neder that you'll make is canceled already? And each proof that we brought, we said maybe the pshat is differently. Maybe you're just saying it now. When I'll hear it, it should be retrospective. But when I'll hear it, I'm going to know it then. So we're up to now the Gemara. 3 lines on top of the page. A further question, but this question will be predicated on the assumption that the husband doesn't maybe have to hear the neder in order to annul it. And if you can assume that, what about in the following scenario? And you remember the Rambam always says, whenever it says imtim shalem the Gemara, that means the Gemara is going down that path, and that's probably the halacha. So, that's a question. Chedesh. What happens if the person's a chedesh? What happens if the husband is not sure he didn't hear the neder? It's not possible to hear the neder. Now, in the Gemara, whenever it says chedesh, there's two kinds of chedesh. One is that they're just deaf, but they're not mute, and one is deaf and mute. Someone who's deaf and mute is patam mitzvahs ma'atayra, which means their whole marriage, entire marriage to the wife, is only midurabanan. So we're not talking about that case. We're talking about in the case here with the nedarim out from the Torah, which means we're talking about a chedesh, somebody who can speak but is unable to hear. There's interesting Shvus Yaakov, a whole discussion in Rosh Hashanah and other places. If somebody has to wear a hearing aid in order to hear, but naturally they cannot hear, what's the situation? Like with Kiyah Shreifah, do they have the Chiyah with Kiyah Shreifah? Can they be blowing the Shreifah for others? They can't hear. And then the others, Tzedek talks about it, if they could hear, but you have to scream loud in order for them to hear. And this just amplifies the voice, makes it easier. That's not the same thing as somebody who can't hear, but only if they put in a bionic ear or a hearing aid or something that makes it possible for them to hear. And it's questionable what the din would be. Follow the line of logic would be the same question with glasses. So a blind person, but he needs glasses to see. Without them, can see anything. Halachically, what would their status be? If you follow the same line of reasoning by hearing, which is Shvus Yaakov brought down in Shara Chua.
Because it's an artificial sound, or because it's an inherent thing that if the person doesn't hear, there's some issue.
No, the whole idea of all the things are, the Rosh says yesterday, why can't you make shlichus for hearing? Because it happens naturally. You don't have to do anything. Here, there's an outside thing that's making it happen. How do we view that? Anyway, generally today it's assumed already that it's pretty much all right. So what about a chedesh? If the husband is not capable of hearing, can he annul the nedarim of his wife? If you're going to answer me, yesterday's Gemara, that Baal Mayfir, if you're going to tell me yesterday's Gemara that the outcome would be that a husband or a father can annul the nedarim of the wife or daughter, even if they don't hear it, I'll tell you why. The bar mishmahu, he's capable of hearing it. Abu chedesh, the lav bar mishmahu, but a chedesh, somebody who's deaf, who's impossible for him to hear it. Maybe then it's no good. Now, why should there be a difference? Either you have to hear, or you don't have to hear. What's the difference if you can or you can't? No, there is a big difference. Hainu Rab Zayda is a famous Rab Zayda that's brought down all over Shas. The Gemara says that a person, if he donates a certain amount of a measure for a carbon mincha of flour and then oil, if it's 60 esrainim, he can bring it in one pot. 61, he has to bring it in 2 pots. Why? Because it's no longer it's not mixable anymore. So the question is, but that's the question, but you don't have to mix it. The halach is if you didn't mix it, it's still kosher. So what's wrong with having 61 esrainim in one giant pot? As long as you could mix it, then even if you don't, it's all right. But if you can't, then it's not all right. So the Rab Zayda says, and the Shagas Arya in the beginning of Shagas Arya, I think has a whole arichas about somebody in the middle of Shemon Esrei, and he cannot speak in about kedusha regarding he's stopping to hear kedusha. Is it as if yaitz or not yaitz? And could we say shemei koina? Maybe we say shemei. If you hear, it's as if you said it. Maybe shemei koina is only if you wanted. You could have been oina yourself, but now you would decide to be shemei. But in Shemon Esrei, you had no choice. You couldn't be oina. Then maybe we don't say shemei koina because the big machlek is Rashi and Tosfos and Brachos and other places. How we understand shemei? If you listen as if you responded, is good enough. Anyway, the Rebbe said that if it's capable or possible to be stirred, then bil is amakiv. So maybe I can make a distinction between the husband and the chedish. In a case where an ordinary husband just happened not to hear it, doesn't matter. But in a case the husband was unable to hear it, maybe it does matter. Or maybe the whole this is what the Torah said and the husband heard, and so on it's not ma'akev at all. Why not? Because the Torah is telling you this is usually how it is. You hear it, you know it. That's pivotal in this whole annulment thing. So how do we understand? Says the Gemara, Amar says Rabbi Toshma coming here. It says in Pasuk, it says in the Braisa, B'Shama Isha, and the husband heard, and the Braisa says, Prat le'eish es chedesh, but that this excludes the wife of somebody who's deaf. Clear, Shema Minah, that if the man is deaf, he cannot know the Nedarim of his wife. Now, why doesn't all the Rishonim want to know why the Gemara yesterday didn't bring this Braisa? It says clearly the only one who's excluded is somebody who is deaf. It seems like an ordinary person, even if he didn't hear it, it'll be good enough. Others say no, not at all. He's just giving you an example of somebody who's deaf, but really the same will be by an ordinary person as well. And others say that the Bryce himself is not clear, what he's not sure because of the question of Rabbi Zeta. How do we deal with the Rabbi Zeta when it comes to another husband? And there are some Rishonim who learn there's a difference between the father and the outcome of the Gemara and the husband. That by the father, it seems that listening, it says that as if the wording of the pasuk says that the husband has to hear, and the father has to hear, and only then he can know the net. It sounds like that if he doesn't hear, he can't. By the husband, it just says he happened to hear. So therefore, by the husband, maybe it's not critical that he hears it, as long as he makes that he's conditional. I'll annul you done good enough. Ibailu, another question. There's two wives. Can he use one word to annul both the Nedarim? Because the Torah says you have to annul the Neder. Can he say both of you the Nedarim is annulled, or does he have to go to each wife separately and annul them separately? And what's the question here? What's one or another? The pasuk says the day that the husband heard Yoni Isa. Isa is singular. So the Torah is being very pedantic, very particular, and they're saying only singular. The Isa dafka, when it says Isa her, that you could only annul one wife's Nedarim. And the others, the same question would be two Nedarim for the wife at the same time. Can you or not? And there's a big discussion here because we have a concept called Ein Oisin Mitzvahs Chavilas. We don't bundle up mitzvahs. We'll have that in Gemara Seita soon. You don't bundle up mitzvahs. Big Machlekes Rashi says why you don't bundle up mitzvahs. But most of them hold that it's only midrabanan. We don't want you to bundle up mitzvahs Rashi because then it looks like you're trying to get out of it, and so the whole thing's a pain and you're taking shortcuts. Or Taisa said because you're distracted. We want you to focus on the mitzvah. And if you're doing two at the same time, you're not really focused. And the question would be here regarding two Nedarim from one wife. Can you annul it? The Gemara right now is asking about two wives. Can you annul the Nedarim of two wives? Do we say Oisa Dafka? Or Lav Dafka? But the Torah just happens because generally you have a wife and you hear the Neder. But the Torah doesn't really care. For two wives, you can put it together as well. Tashma coming in, but it says we learned Ein mashkin shtei saitas ka'achas. If a woman is committed, and we'll learn a saita, this woman who was born not to be secluded along with this person, and she was with witnesses, and the husband now suspects adultery. So we have to. The only way for her to get back and reunite with her husband is to go to the Beis Hamikdash and drink that water where you put Hashem's name in. We do not give two saitas to drink at the same time. Why not? Because what happens is the other woman, let's say, is taka innocent. So the second woman who is taka guilty saw that nothing happened to the first woman. She doesn't know what the real story. She'll think, this whole thing is not real. So it will embolden her to take the risk, and we don't want that. She became emboldened because of her friend. So that's why we don't want you to drink two, let's say, at the same time. Comes along, the Yehuda says no. Nothing to do with that. It says in the pasuk you should give it to drink Isa and singular. So what do we see here? A clear machlekes. Rabbi Yehuda says that we take the word Isa and we learn it literally that only one woman at a time. Isa. So in that case, the same thing by Nedarim would be Isa. The husband can only annul the neder of one wife. But according to the Tanakhama, who doesn't in any way focus on the word Isa, he gives another reason altogether. That means according to Tanakama, Isa alone wouldn't do it because Isa can mean two at the same time. So the same thing by Nedarim, he could annul two wives at the same time. That's how some of the Shem learn the Gemara. Others want to learn that the Tanakhama here, Rabbi Yehuda, is Tanakhama is of Shimon. Reb Shimon generally argues Reb Yehuda. Either Reb Meir argues Reb Shimon. And Reb Shimon has a whole different reason. His reason is because there's Shin time in the crop. But see, in other places, Reb Shimon holds that just because like by a melech, so when the Torah gives a law, if we can work out the reason for the pasuk, then that becomes the parameters of that halacha. For example, do not take a mashkin from a woman because then you have to bring it back. So Reb Shimon says, but for a rich woman you can. Because the whole reason is you have to bring it back every night. People start getting suspicious that this guy is meeting a single woman, a widow. So Rav Shimon said, but if the woman is rich, he's not bringing it back, so he's allowed to. And the Chachamim disagree. They don't dash in time in the crop. So and so in other words, if you learn that way, then even Rav Shimon agrees that I agree with you. The pasuk Oisa means only one woman. I'm just giving you a reason why. Why did the pasuk say Oisa? Because of this reason, Gas B'Chalut. Okay, Mishnah.
So we leave it unresolved.
Leave it on Machlekes and Paskin. How do we Paskin? Whether you can have two wives or not. So I think next Mishnah, we already had this quote in the Gemara before. Aboygeres sheshasa yibes chaydish. Aboygeres, she's 12 and a half years old, no longer under the jurisdiction of her father, and she's engaged. And then she waited 12 months. And this is what we said, that a woman waits 12 months before she gets married. But we already said before that a Bulgarian doesn't have to wait 12 months, only 30 days. Even though true, the day she's 12 and a half, she waits 12 months. But after that, only 30 days. So we decided to read the Mishnah and break it up. Bulgaris, either a case of a Bulgaris or a Naira that waited 12, we add the word Naira, or a girl that was under 12 and a half that waited 12 months. The Almana and a widow, Lamed Yom, 30 days. And in all of these cases, that's when the husband, after that period, the husband comes in and he's able to cancel the Nedarim. Rabbi Lezer says, Hoyel, and that's only according to Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer says, even though they didn't get married yet, Hoyel b'bayla chayib b'mzonasel yafim. Because the husband has to feed her, then he's entitled also to annul her Nedarim. Chachamim disagree. They say, he does not have the right to cancel Nedarim until actually they get married. Machlek is a shaynim what exactly means tichanas. Does it mean a chuppah, or does it mean when the father sends the daughter off with the shluchim of the husband and they're on the way to the chuppah already from that moment on onwards? Rabbi says, Rabbi Eliezer says here that even though they didn't get married, didn't consummate their marriage, the fact that he provides for her already gives him a lot of entitlements. It's treated as if he's married already. And the original Mishnah, we'll see in a minute what we're talking about there. The original Mishnah is talking about Truma. It used to be that a woman who was able to get Truma, we say that Arusa, a woman who's engaged, according to the Torah, biblically, they should be able to eat Truma already. Because Kinyan, the Kinyan was made, and you're allowed to eat Truma. The reason why she cannot eat Truma, we had a Gemara Ksubas Machlekes, which Ula, and the other Amida, whether because of Simpon or because Shemi in other words, are we worried that once he marries her, he'll find out that she has certain women flaws that he cannot put up with? And it was retrospectively, the whole marriage is a no. That means in the meantime, she's been eating truma, but she had no right to, because it's retrospective that annulment of the marriage. And therefore, we're worried about that, even though it's not common, so it's not even the Rabbanon. Or it's because she's still home. And therefore, he will give her food and she'll give it to share it around with the family. So it's only midrabanan. Then what happens after he starts providing for her? You should be able to. And then Mishnah Chayil says, no truma at all until they get married. So it sounds like the Mishnah Rishayna agrees with Rabbi Eliezer. Once the husband starts providing for her, it's like married, therefore he can give her truma. That's what the Gemara is trying to equate. That's what I was trying to equate. Just now we learned nice to fine. It's not going to give up Psula 12 months to organize herself to get married. You'd be 12 months expire. She can start eating from her husband. She's also entitled to eat truma. And we're not worried either reason why. Simple, by now, already 12 months, your family got to know her. They would have seen her out swimming or something. You would have any major defects they would have seen, observed. They would have told him already. And if he's still continuing, means we're not really worried that there are any other defects. Number one. And regarding that, feeding your family, once he starts feeding her properly on a normal basis, on a constant basis, he's going to say to her, "Hey, I'm not feeding your whole family. I'm providing for you. So therefore, I want you to eat in a separate room." Or a separate place. So therefore, once you do that, we're not worried. You're sort of isolating her. We're not worried that the truma that you're going to give her, she's going to share around with her family either. That was the Mishnah of Shayna. Abel Hayavam, but we'll see in the next mission actually as well. The relationship of a Yavam is very different. They're not married yet. Just because there's an onus on this brother-in-law to marry her because his brother passed away childless, there's an onus on to marry. But then it's only a zika, and we had a whole discussion with Sham Basil Zika whether it's it's already still a bond or not a bond, but not enough to be able to give it truma to eat. Abel Yavam ain't a Michael, but you're not eating truma. Let's say she worked 6 months for the husband, and 6 months. In other words, 6 months she was with her husband, then 6 months in the yavam. The point is, she's now 12 months went by, or I feel a kula b'fnei bal chasi yemechad, or the entire 12 months was with the husband minus 1 day. So there was not 12 months yet the husband. In other words, if you take this Gemara really literally, which many of the Shayim do, if she would have lived 12 months with the husband and she would have started eating truma, and then the husband dies and now she's waiting for brother-in-law, once she started eating truma, we let her continue because either concern is no longer really a concern. It says over here, and they take this Gemara literally. Others say no, that no, even if she started eating truma with the husband, the moment the husband died, that right of eating truma disappears with him. And it says chasiyeh mechad, makes no difference chasiyeh mechad or not chasiyeh mechad. It's the same thing. We're just looking at a case where she never started eating truma, but really, even if she started eating truma, she has to stop. Which is redundant. Obviously, no. Ain't truma, doesn't eat truma. Zu mishnah l'rishayna. But the later Bezin said that even in the case where she was engaged for 12 months and the husband started providing for her, you know what? We don't think it's a good idea for her to start eating truma until they consummate the marriage. So it sounds so regarding truma, we say that Rabbi Lezer of the Mishnah Shayna says after 12 months they consider married, you can eat truma, and in our Mishnah Rabbi Lezer says by Nedarim that after 12 months is considered married and he can go another Nedarim. Isn't that the same thing? Of course, Abaye is around. Abaye says, "What are you talking about?" I can, for both respects, I can say it's totally unrelated. Dilmalahi, maybe not so. Ad kind of like Kashmir Mishnah. When it comes to truma, the Mishnah says Elamecha with truma derabbanon. The whole truma is only midrabbanon, and because the whole truma is only midrabbanon, so therefore we say, 12 months go by, Mahatayda they can eat truma straight away. The Rabbanan said you should not eat truma because you might feed, she might feed a family that turn out to have flaws. So as for the Rabbanan said, we're going to relax that rule. We're not so worried because the whole thing is Rabbanan anyway. Now, why is truma only with Rabbanan? Because generally truma today is only with Rabbanan. Or it's talking about a potted plant that did not have a hole, so therefore it doesn't nurture from the ground. There's no Rabbanan. But what's interesting, Rashi adds another example of truma with Rabbanan. Rashi says, Rashi says if you import fruits into Eretz Yisrael, you have to give truma. Interesting Rashi here. Now we know that if the peiros from Chutz La'aretz was not ripe, and you brought it into Eretz Yisrael, you have to give truma. But Rashi says here, stam peiros, the last narrow line on the page, peiros nichnasu b'Chutz La'aretz, open-ended statement. Interesting. Okay, so therefore we're relaxed. After 12 months, go ahead and eat truma. Avol nedarim, but now Mishnah we're talking about the right of a husband to annul nedarim. These nedarim are from the Torah. If she's 12 years old, in fact we discussed last time, 11 years old. If mufla samach isha, then her nedarim according to most opinions are mahatayra. Then who says just because 12 months I'm starting to provide for you, I already have the right? No, you have to get married. Hey Malay. So the Mishnah Rishayna does not necessarily agree with Rabbi Lezer and our Mishnah. And vice versa as well. But when does Rabbi Lezer say that after 12 months you can already take care of the guy by Nedarim? You know why? What we discussed a few days ago, that Pinchas Mashmei the Rabbi, like a Pinchas and the Rabbi. The Amar Kol Hanoideris Aldas Baili Nederis. He gives a reason. Why Taka did the Torah say that the husband has the right to cancel the Nedarim Beinoi LeBeinah, which affect their relationship or detrimental to her personal welfare? What right does the husband have over that? You know why? Because generally speaking, when she makes a neder, it's different than a father. A father has absolute powers over the daughter. He gets to keep her money of kedushin, all of everything she finds. That's something else. When it comes to a husband, he doesn't own the wife, but rather she wants to make sure the relationship is maintained. So she says, "I'm making a neder," as if she said, "I'm making a neder," and provided my husband doesn't mind, even though it's dvarim shebelev. it's in her heart, but this is called umdil muchach. It's so obvious. Nobody wants to disrupt their good relationship, their harmonious relationship. So obviously, she means that as long as my husband is all right with it. So therefore, there's a logic why by Nedarim, even though it's Ma'atayda, the husband has a right to know after 12 months, because once he starts providing for her, she's already thinking. That's a mindset. Okay, I don't want to upset him. We're already having a relatively intimate relationship, more than just being engaged. Avo truma, when it comes to truma, where that logic doesn't apply, even though it's midrabanan that they cannot eat truma, why should she eat after 12 months? What does one thing do to another? Interesting that the Rishonim say that it, with the Rashba and others, what happens if the wife says, I'm making an edit and I don't care what my husband thinks? Because the whole word is of Rava is because of das Bailan Adets. So the Rashba says, interesting difference in the Rashba. I guess it's more the psyche of a woman. The Rashba says, I imagine that it's taka true, somehow or another that she can convince herself she can have a relationship, even though she says that. But Butler Daita, it's a kolod. The vast majority of people won't behave this way. So therefore, the Torah says the husband always has the right. The Ritva says, we don't believe her. Ain pia v'liba shavin. We say that her heart and her mouth are not the same. Her mouth is saying, I don't care what my husband says, but deep down inside, if you scrape a little bit away, otherwise, why stay married? Get out of the marriage. Obviously, she does want to stay in the marriage. She's just angry at the moment. She doesn't really mean it. So ain't people Yishavin. So interesting argument between the Ritva and the Rashba in the psyche of a woman in that particular situation.